In the quiet chill of November, as flags wave against the autumn wind and the echo of distant bugles fills the air, America pauses, schools close, parades march. Veterans stand shoulder to shoulder, heads bowed in memory. It is Veterans Day, a solemn day of honor, reflection, and gratitude. But long before this day carried the name we know, it was born from something different, something deeper in the wounds of a world trying to heal. This is the story of how Veterans Day came to be, and what it was originally called. It began over a century ago, in the final hours of one of humanity's darkest chapters. The First World War had consumed nations, continents, and millions of lives. From 1914 to 1918, the world had never known such devastation. Trenches cut across Europe like open scars. The air was thick with smoke, gas, and grief. Then, on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, the guns fell silent. The armistice had been signed. It was November 11th, 1918. Across the world, church bells rang out, soldiers wept, and families prayed. The Great War, as they called it, was over. That day, the armistice was not just a ceasefire. It was a collective breath after years of horror. It was the first fragile moment of peace the modern world had felt in years. Nations celebrated, but the joy was haunted. The cost of peace had been carved into the souls of millions. In the United States, President Woodrow Wilson declared November 11, 1919, as the first commemoration of Armistice Day. It was meant to honor the heroism of those who fought and to mark the triumph of peace over war. Wilson's words that day were powerful. He spoke not of victory, but of remembrance. To us in America, he said, the reflections of Armistice Day will be filled with solemn pride in the heroism of those who died in the country's service, and with gratitude for the victory. There were parades in towns, moments of silence, and ceremonies at cemeteries. Yet, in those early years, Armistice Day was not a holiday of celebration. It was one of humility, a recognition of sacrifice, and the fragile hope that humanity had learned its lesson. But history rarely stays still. Barely 2 decades later, the world would once again be consumed by war. When World War II erupted, and later the Korean War, a new generation of Americans stepped forward, millions of them, to fight in lands they had never seen, for freedoms they might never personally enjoy. They were not just soldiers from the Great War. They were sailors, airmen, Marines, and medics from every corner of the country, and their service reshaped what the word veteran meant. By the early 1950s, the idea of Armistice Day, centered solely on World War I, no longer captured the full measure of America's sacrifice. The name itself began to feel too narrow, too bound to a single moment in time. The war that was supposed to end all wars had not. The world had changed, and so had those who defended it. The movement to rename Armistice Day began in a small town in Kansas, led by a man named Alvin King. He was a shoe store owner in Emporia, and like many Americans, he had seen young men from his town go off to fight in both world wars. His inspiration was personal. His nephew had died in World War II. King proposed that Armistice Day should honor not just those who died in World War I, but all veterans who served in any war or peacetime duty. He believed the name Veterans Day would embrace the broader spirit of sacrifice that had defined generations. The idea resonated deeply, spreading beyond Emporia, catching the attention of lawmakers, veterans organizations, and eventually the nation itself. In 1954, Congress passed a bill to officially change the name of Armistice Day to Veterans Day. President Dwight D. Eisenhower, himself a 5-star general from World War II, signed it into law on June 1, 1954. With a stroke of his pen, the meaning of November 11th expanded forever. What began as a day to mark the end of one war became a day to honor all who had served, past, present, and future. The spirit of the holiday transformed too. Veterans Day was not about mourning, it was about gratitude. It was about the men and women who put on the uniform and carried the weight of freedom, often without recognition, often without applause. It was about those who returned home and tried to rebuild their lives, carrying memories that never truly faded. And it was about a nation learning to say thank you, not just once a year, but every day. Yet the journey of this day did not end there. In 1968, in an effort to create more 3-day weekends for federal employees, Congress passed the Uniform Monday Holiday Act, moving Veterans Day to the fourth Monday in October. The change was meant to be practical, but it felt wrong. The symbolism of November 11th, the date that ended the First World War, was sacred to veterans and citizens alike. The public's reaction was immediate. Veterans groups protested, communities resisted, and many continued to celebrate on November 11th, despite the change. Finally, in 1975, President Gerald Ford signed a law restoring Veterans Day to its rightful place on November 11th, beginning in 1978. The date mattered because it was more than a number. It was a promise. It was a reminder that peace, when won, should never be taken for granted. Over time, the meaning of Veterans Day has continued to evolve. It is no longer just a national holiday. It is a living testament to the courage and resilience of those who have worn the uniform. Across the United States, from small towns to bustling cities, from monuments in Washington, D.C. to humble memorials in local parks, the same message echoes each year. Freedom is not free. Each November, stories unfold, some spoken, many silent. The old soldier standing alone at dawn, his hat pressed against his chest. The young woman in uniform saluting the flag she once carried through the desert. The child clutching a folded photo of a parent who never came home. Veterans Day is their day, but it belongs to all of us. It reminds us that history lives not only in books or parades, but in the hearts of those who served. What makes this day remarkable is not the fanfare, but the connection it creates, a bridge between generations. The veterans of World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan may wear different uniforms and tell different stories, but they share the same unwavering bond, the promise to serve something greater than themselves. The transformation from Armistice Day to Veterans Day mirrors the evolution of America's identity itself. A nation that once celebrated the end of war now honors those who endure it. The shift reflects growth, gratitude, and realism, a recognition that peace is not a permanent state, but a responsibility carried by those willing to defend it. And though the name changed, the spirit remains. Each November 11th, the 11th hour still holds its quiet power. Across the country, people pause for a moment of silence. Bells toll, flags lower, and somewhere, a veteran remembers friends who never returned. It is in that silence that the true meaning of Veterans Day can be felt, not in speeches or ceremonies, but in the shared heartbeat of a grateful nation. Because behind every medal, behind every folded flag, is a story that changed the course of freedom. Armistice Day may have marked the end of a war, but Veterans Day marks the endurance of a people, the strength to fight, to serve, to hope, and to believe in the promise of peace. It is not just a date on the calendar. It is a testament to the human spirit, to sacrifice, and to the enduring courage of those who have answered the call. As we stand beneath the same November sky that once witnessed the silence after the guns, we are reminded that freedom's cost is written not in ink, but in the lives of those who serve to protect it. And as the last note of taps fades into the wind, one truth endures, as powerful now as it was in 1918. The peace they fought for must never be forgotten.